I want to thank everybody. I want to welcome everyone here. I guess if you are hearing me, it's good to have all of us here. This meeting. Of course, some of us are just leaving the meeting that we just finished with the ICPC, and it's glad that we're all here. Some of us who were there a while ago should have the privilege of the information that is really critically needed for us to understand some of the things that we have talked about. I want to especially welcome everyone that have taken the time. It doesn't matter what level of understanding and the experiences we have had with the COVID-19 funds management, the PRIMOG, the Progressive Impact Organization for Community Development. I'll be working with a great number of people, individuals and organizations in trying to explain this. We have used our radio programs, our online engagements to try to reach out to citizens across the country so that we all can understand exactly what the provisions are. And I'm glad that almost everyone and the organizations that we have been working with are this meeting. So I want to thank you so very much for joining us. And we are not going to, because it's just a 1 hour program, we are going to make it very straightforward, brief, and so that all of us will have a place. Our key participants were drawn, I mean the speakers were drawn from the civil society organizations and the key agencies that have been working in this regard. We want to give them opportunity here from ICPC and BPP in the strengthening the capacity, the information that we require. Right away, I would just want to quickly take to here. I saw him on the line a while ago. I don't know if the representative of the BP is right in here. More people are joining, and I think I saw Mike Aboro. I don't know if you are hearing me, representative of the BPE. Thank you very much. Can you quickly give us a rundown, just briefly, of the ICPC guidelines and how the CSO can engage with these guidelines along with the relevant government agencies, so that we begin to know how to begin to build a consensus and maybe a coalition along with you to monitor closely the relevant government MDAs that are responsible for spending this fund.
All right, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I'll try as much as possible to be as brief as possible. The Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission, ICPC, pursuant to Section 6B to D of its Act that empowers it to carry out preventive mandate. Based on that act, the chairman of the commission immediately, Mr. President, inaugurated a presidential task force, engaged with them proactively on the need for the COVID-19 response to be above board, the need for transparency, accountability, and integrity of the process. And the management of PTF really welcomed the chairman's initiative, which led to the guideline that you are talking about. On several fora, the chairman of the ICPC have said, and I want to reiterate, that the guidelines are advisory in nature. They do not replace the public service rules, the financial regulations, nor anything that comes from the Office of the Accountant General of the Federation. Rather, the guidelines are based on our experience as investigators. What are those things that we meet as investigators, and what areas can the PTF look into? So, having given you that background, I would just like to run through the guideline in the next few minutes. So, what are the areas that the ICPC felt that the Presidential Task Force and MDAs that are involved in the COVID-19 response, first and foremost, said either by Nigerians or international donors or other bodies? The guideline states that PTF should have several accounts where this money can come in, or you can't spend from those accounts, and the money are swept into one collective account. From that account where it has been implemented, because the Accountant General of the Federation has a treasury singular account for PTF, where all the monies that goes to each of those commercial banks where donations go to are swept into. The second issue we talked about was advances, because based on our investigation, we noticed that ministries, department, agencies have a penchant for abusing cash advances. Most times the advances they give are beyond what is in the regulations. Sometimes some staff are giving up to 100 million, 200 million, 300 million in cash. And these advances create several problems. First of all, we notice that those advances are given to staff instead of the monies being awarded as contracts. And if they are awarded as contracts, it results in job creation, there's tax benefits for government, and it reduces the elements of fraud. So the guideline from the Commission to PTF says that advances should be minimized. And where advances are given, they should be retired immediately. And those given advances should report on them on a weekly basis. This is just when they are given, they are used for the people. Third area is in the area of expenditure. Because once the donation comes in, the money has to go out. So the guideline says that all payments to third parties, be it contractors, vendors, or other must be through bank account. The guideline also states that vendors can only be paid after they have rendered their service or they meet a pre-agreed milestone. So with this, we ensure that payments will be for only goods that are supplied, services that are rendered, or milestones that are met. Then we'll also talk about the area of procurement. We know that in normal situations where there is no emergency in Nigeria, procurement has become an issue. And as a result of that, government has brought out the Public Procurement Act and other acts to regulate procurement. That is under normal situation. Not to talk of in era of emergency. We know that the abuse can be high. So we also advise in our advisory or guideline that any procurement during COVID should be pursuant to Section 43 of the Public Procurement Act that has to do with emergency procurement. It has the procedures to be followed, be it restrictive bidding or open competitive bidding. The Section 43 of the Act has procedure to be followed. And in our regulation, we told the PTF and MDs they must abide by this. Lastly, the guideline also has audit, oversight, monitoring, and evaluation. PTF and the ministries, department, agencies, spending must ensure that they have in place a functional audit unit or section are used for the purpose approved. Then, on the issue of audits and oversight, monitoring and evaluation, in the guidelines, we also suggested that PTF should welcome bodies that are not public sector bodies, such as NGOs, CSOs, or even private individuals that want to pretend over the response. By so doing, it will introduce what we call openness to the system, accountability, and transparency. There will be no room for rumors.
Yeah, thank you. I guess we can move on now to see if we have the representative of BPE or here with us. I don't know if we have a representative of the BPE here with us. Do we have anybody representing code here?
Yes, I'm a representative of Connected Development. I would like to first of all commend the EPP and ICPC for the guidelines released. I would also, however, like to state that it is not just enough to release guidelines. These government agencies should also be willing to follow through where there's the deviation from the stipulated guidelines. While the representative of the ICPC mentioned that they are not mandatory, they are merely advisory. However, we should still be willing to follow the process. Government needs to be willing to hold the big stick where their guidelines, their laws are being granted. Now, I would also go to my experience in Abuja with the procurement process. I was at the phase 1 and phase 3 of the palliative distribution by AMAC. And from my observation, the process went smoothly. It's my understanding that whenever, excuse me, that whenever a public institution, a public entity is about to make a procurement, they have to create a procurement plan, they have to inform the PPP, they have to list out, do the entire process, they have to go through the entire process. And it's my understanding that those processes were followed through. And some of our partners in Uganda, they mentioned the fact that their government institutions made a lot of procurements, and because they didn't follow through the processes, like they hid under the fact that it was an emergency procurement. Based on the fact that they didn't follow through the procurement processes, many of the food stuff that was bought and shared were unfit for consumption, and that's the kind of thing that is being avoided by these guidelines. So the distribution in Abuja, while I was there, the goods that were brought, they were in perfect condition. They were according to the specification. Everything was according to as it should have been, and for that I'm very grateful. I'm glad that we had such strong processes that had to be followed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me just go before I come to. I think Eze1 is ready now. I will come to Sarah as soon as I finish with Eze1. Let's get back to Mr. Eze1 of Say No campaign. And you were in Abuja. You issued some reports. You did some monitoring with regard to some of the spendings at the level of the palliatives. Now, having heard what the ICPC have said, please, can you quickly, just 2 minutes, give us your own intervention, what you think we should do in relation to implementing the intervention?
So I'm saying that if you have an emergency, the emergency creates a situation in which government entities will then get into fire brigade measures. And once you have fire brigade measures, the corruption is very close. And that's why the guidelines that ICPC has put forward is very critical for civil society. And what we can use that guideline to do is a tool for advocacy, engagements with them, but by serious employment of the tools that we also have. The one to say if you didn't have a bid process, if you as a civil society organization you did not attend the bid opening process, you cannot make a. There's no luxury for bid opening procedures and follow through all of those things. So with us that will follow, because that's regimented engagement with with these entities. Otherwise, what you will do would be an open specifically to say, for instance, the Federal Capital Territory Authority says they will distribute 600,000 bags of rice and condiments. Who took account of those? And where you took account, did you open all the 600 bags to be ensured that they are in good condition? So we can't make those wide claims. What we need to do is to ensure that the tools that we already have, which is that the Freedom of Information, Act, is obeyed by PTF and even the NCDC. We should be able to say what were the processes that were used in determining the contractors that you gave the contract to provide this rice. Was there? Did you call more than 1, 2, 3 people? What were the prices they gave? Those are the opportunities that normal times can give to you. But in situations of emergency, you are not going to. So if you listen to our brother from ICPC very clearly, he underscored that point, that once you have an emergency, you're going to see a situation in which abuse is very rife. And how can civil society mitigate that abuse is by asking them to respect the laws that they have already put in place, which I think the Freedom of Information Act will play a much more bigger role in helping us to unravel issues around transparency and accountability at this time.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ezewana. Okay, Zanam, which group do you represent, please?
No, I'm from Step Up Nigeria. I'm just an audience. I just came to listen.
Okay. Thank you for joining us. Somebody has logged in from MacArthur Foundation. I want to also, because we actually want to share some experience. Unfortunately, that is gone. So that let's take Kolawole Oluwadare. Oluwadare, you are with us from Serap.
Yes, Mr. Agbosere.
Yes, please go ahead.
If we're talking about the ICPC guidelines, I've looked at the guidelines, and there's a question that pops up. I think we've talked about before. Is who is the PTF chairman accountable to? Looking at the PTF guidelines, there appears to be too much concentration in the hands of the PTF chairman. Looking at the ICPC guidelines, looking at the BBP for items and procurement for items that might have already been budgeted for in the approved operation with the Office of the Accountant General in that regard, to prevent a sort of a double expenditure from the government. And I think generally, historically in Nigeria, policy or laws or guidelines for whatever nomenclature we give it has never been the problem. It has always been about implementation. And of course, that connotes whether there is a willingness to punish whoever is erring under those guidelines. And from my own experience from Serap, since the beginning of this lockdown, the pandemic, and the various government interventions, and I would see an apparent lack of transparency, as it were. And I want to define transparency and accountability in this regard, not to mean transparency to CSOs, but transparency to the citizens of Nigeria. The Constitution and the various laws, including the FY Act, does not say that government will be transparent to CSOs. It's transparent and accountable to the people. So even if CSOs like Serap send out freedom of information requests, and since this thing started, we sent out over 42 FYI requests, and I think we've only got responses to 4 or thereabouts of those responses. If they are not responsible and accountable to CSOs, will they be accountable to citizens? I don't think that's enough. So I would say that more needs to be done. Even if government is sincere in the various efforts and palliatives, people need to be carried along with good and credible information. Like we've seen from the discourse that's just ended with the ICPC, there are information that we're hearing for the first time, which should naturally be in the public domain. So if civil society do not, we are structured for this kind of thing and program for this kind of thing, if we don't have access to such information, then imagine, think about the average citizen. And I think it's not enough, again, for government to just call CSOs and expose some of the facts to them, but to carry every citizen along, making the information available in such a format that everyone can have access to it. So if I'm going to rank government in order of the transparency and accountability of the various initiatives across board, including the homeschooling program, the conditional cash transfer, and the various initiatives, I would rank them a very dismal low. Not necessarily because there is corruption.
Okay, to a very, very large extent, if everyone is hearing me, I have my doubt. He made a very strong point. For instance, I just heard at that meeting just now that there were lines of expenditure that could be done without the processes, because under the emergency rule section 431 of the Procurement Act, there are certain level of expenses that they can quickly just do without entering the system. But what is beautiful is that there's the publication, daily publication under the open treasury.government.org that we are supposed to engage with. So the question is, how do we as civil society organizations assist ourselves with this, with SCPC, with groups like BPP? How do we assist ourselves to be sure that we get all these government agents to align and obey all the rules, all the corrections, all the things that they are supposed to do, the guidelines that they are obeyed? 12 is up. I don't know who's code up. I thought we spoke earlier. Are hearing me? You can just indicate your let's hear you out on these points that I have just raised. Okay, if I'm not hearing any voices, that is like okay, Peter Kanga is a voice. So Peter, please, can you go ahead, please?
Yes, sir, please. Can you hear me? Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you very well. Please introduce yourself and let's go straight to we have two minutes.
Splendid, sir. Thank you. My name is Peter Nkana. I'm a journalist, a campaigner, and also a transparency and accountability practitioner at TAP. So I've been listening to what you said, and something strikes me very, very important. You mentioned about the Open Treasury portal. It doesn't work in the sense that it's not updated. There is supposed to be a daily transaction. There's supposed to be many criteria that is according to the guidelines that the Office of the Accountant General, the Ministry of Finance set up. But it doesn't work. If you go there, you will see that under the eradication, COVID-19 eradication section, only one data has been published, and that was since April. So in terms of how the government themselves, who are giving these guidelines, how are they also implementing the guidelines that they gave? That's one problem. Now, in terms of how we can collectively hold government to account, I believe what Serap said is what we should do. FOIs, as they have done, when they are not being complied with, we take it back to the authorities and say, you gave us these guidelines, we are maintaining them, now do your own part. But we just can't afford to let it sit down and just hope that things get better. We have to mobilize to get better. And we can use what they have put out in front of us to give it back to them for them to be held accountable.
Okay, thank you very much, Peter Kanga. That's very instructive. Let's see more interventions, just because time is actually running out. To have just about 20, 25 minutes. Yeah, who is there?
All right. My name is Uzochukwu Ohanya. I'm from Connected Development.
Okay, go ahead.
So, as I was saying, a lot of these government institutions are not forthcoming with information. They see it as an affront to their authority whenever you send an FOI. Many institutions fail to respond to FOIs. They either ignore it or they outright refuse to respond, citing the Secrecies Act. But I would like to say that the reason many of these institutions carry on with this impunity is because a lot of the CSOs, a lot of the NGOs and other organizations fail to follow through. Because if you look at the FOI Act, there is a timeline within which an FOI should be responded to. There are also exceptions under which an FOI can be rejected. However, where the institution refuses to respond to you and their reason does not fall within those exceptions, there are steps that an NGO, a CSO can take. You could take it to court, you could make certain reports. So if we follow through with the process all the way to the end to ensure that there are some pecuniary measures rather that we take, which will prevent other institutions, because we need at this point we need to actually start bringing up scapegoats. We need to hold these institutions to account, because information are stuck in trade, and if we cannot have access to information, then what are we here for? So secondly, as regards how we can get these government institutions, hold them to account and get them to follow the processes, it will be through advocacy. We keep doing what we've been doing. It has yielded several results. So we keep doing it. We need to go as a coalition. The CSOs, we need to come together and bring out one voice, because a united front is always stronger than five different voices. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, and that is very instructive. Now, I will need one or two more interventions before I ask the ICPC to respond. But the general thing we should be all be looking at is how do we, at the level of the CSOs, work together as a team, not as individuals. Is a coalition for this, no matter how small or big it is. Is necessary? Can we work individually or to get this result, particularly with respect to the COVID-19 funds and all the administrative frameworks that have been put in place? Is there any? Are we going to achieve any mileage if we can team up to work together? I will need one or two interventions before we go. There's the one I can see you wanting to respond.
Yeah, I also have a comment.
Okay. So what we need to do is to appreciate that advocacy is not a microwave thing. You don't put it in and bring it out. For advocacy, you need to be there. You need to stay on the matter. You need to be consistent. But the bigger challenge that we're having now is capture. There's a capture that is going on. The institutions that were supposed to oversight have taken a deliberate program of making sure that they bring in those who should oversight them into their activities in a way that makes it difficult for that oversight to happen. So we need to be clearly take cognizance of that fact that that is happening right now. You can't attend meeting with the person you are oversighting on a regular basis and then think that you can do that oversight work with the efficiency that is required. As to your question as to working together, we will work together. We will also work, because unity does not mean uniformity. We will work together, but there are organizations that have skills, okay, that have particular skills. So what is happening is that coalition is a goat that is owned by the community. Nobody provides fodder for that this thing. We will do this, but remember, if a format with which we are going to work together, I think that is important. For the ICPC is a partner. It is a very important partner in the work that we do.
Thank you, Bola Hamzat. I represent the International Center for Investigative Reports in Abuja. And a good point that Peter and Kuyo has made, right? We have good guidelines. I've looked through the guidelines, and they are good. In the course of our reporting is that some of these things that the BP listed in their guidelines are not even started. The guidelines says that all procurement for COVID-19 projects, and they said the plan should be uploaded into the Nigerian Open Contract portal, where it is when it will be assessed by BPP. And any project that is not included in the procurement plan of the procuring entity shall not be processed for payment. But as we speak now, how many of the procurement plans do we have on that platform? So we, as a news organization, we have been tracking that, and we realize that these are good guidelines on papers, but the implementation is still very weak. And the question we need to start asking now is to make sure that BPP ensure that all the procurement plans by any procuring entities are uploaded, so that anybody who is interested can access it more easily. That's my contribution. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to listen to Doi Ojoipi and Dr. Sam.
I've listened to most of the presentation. Clearly, what is we have the framework, like as and what others have said. But what two things are missing? One is that the government agencies and the ministries are not effectively operationalizing their framework. In previous, we have discussed about the lack of follow-up. Agencies are not, carrying out those responsibilities. So we need to have more effective control at the level of government. Again, thankfully we have NGOs tracking these things. What matters for accountability in this situation? Three things. One is information. We need to know who is procuring what are you spending. So that's why those reporting is important. Again, information has two dimensions. Yeah. Information that government provides, information that elements like civil society and other stakeholders investigate and confirm. So which will give them the benefit of that. Another issue is around oversight by agencies of government itself. You see, oftentimes we're looking at ICPC, EFCC. These are what you call last-minute oversight when things have failed. But are those who ought to ensure that people do what they ought to do. Reports that's supposed to be put online. For example, the portal, the open government portal, that's a very important portal for tracking a weekly expenditure, should have supervisors in the Ministry of Finance or accredited officers who are tracking and ensure that these agencies are not putting or they're putting the wrong thing. So at the level of control, the internal control is important. Then at the level of external control is when you fail, EFC picks it up, or ICPC queries are raised, or PPP raises query, civil society may even go to court in the second level accountability framework. So the first level is internal, it's missing. We need to push pressure on the government to deliver on that. Then our own side is keep tracking and reporting, and then we can follow up by using judicial, legal, or other methods to put pressure on role occupants and task owners to deliver. Or ultimately, we'll go to court and say maybe someone should prosecuted track should be kept clear. One is the platforms, which are seemingly okay on paper. Two is the government institutions that ought to drive those initial performance.
Okay.
Those reporting.
Dr. Samamadi, I really need to stop you now. I really need to stop you now. Thank you for your intervention. Let's just quickly go up without taking notes and hearing from what you have seen. Mr. Michael Agboro, what do you what are your immediate reactions to these developments and what lessons are we taking from here?
Thank you very much, Ohiria, once again for this opportunity to address this August gathering. Nigeria is waking up, and I'm happy to see that. So let me just go straight to the point. The first person commented that the advisory, because we cannot replace the public service rules and the financial regulations. That is the function of the Accountant General of the Federation. However, the chairman of the commission has stated that he is determined to prosecute any public officer who diverts COVID-19 response funding. So therefore, as CSOs, NGOs, and collaborators in this fight against corruption, if you have any, I repeat, any instance of infraction, you are free to report it to the chairman of the commission. And I'm sure, 100% sure, is going to see the light of the day. Secondly, somebody asked the question, how can ICPC work with the NGOs, the CSOs? I'd like to state that ICPC is already working with the civil society organization. There's what we call the National Anti-Corruption Coalition. It's a coalition of NGOs who are registered with the ICPC. So if your NGO is already a member of that coalition, you have a platform to engage the ICPC. But if you are not, you can find out how you can get on board so that we can work together, because Nigeria is our country. We have no other country, and we need to clean up the mess that is disturbing us. Let me just take two more areas. Peter Kanga talked about the guidelines. That even governments themselves, they don't implement their own guidelines. What should we then do? Should we fold our hands and look at them? That's why I talk about this reawakening. It is incumbent on the CSOs, the NGOs, even the Nigerian populace to keep asking questions. As long as we remain silent, government can get away with whatever they want to do. But if the populace are very active, the CSO, the NGOs, government will be on its toes and they will do what is right. So this is time for us to ask questions, time for action, time for being reactive is past. Then he also talked about FY response. Somebody, I think from Serap, said they made about several requests, only 4 has come back. I am sure that in the FY Act itself, if somebody fails to respond, there is a redress that you can take. Unless you start challenging ourselves, going beyond the obvious, doing what is outside the ordinary, we will still continue running the same rat race, the same circle that we're going. But if NGOs like Serap start taking all these organizations to court, suing them for their inability to respond, as time goes on, people will start taking those requests very seriously. But if nothing is done, then no response will come. So based on that, I would just like to end that ICPC welcomes collaboration of government agencies. Although we are government, but we are in between government and the CSOs. We cannot be part of government when it comes to corruption. When it comes to corruption, we are part of the CSO. So you can see the balance we have to strike. But if we work together, I believe that we can clean up this country and make it a better place not for us, but for the generation that is coming in future. Thank you very much.
I must appreciate ICPC for this wonderful president. I appreciate everyone that have managed to join us, battled this network. We need to do, we'll be perfecting it. I believe all the other groups, every other group will be involved in this. And I want to appreciate everybody that turned up on this conference. But it's a continuing dialogue. We need to continue the discussion. We need to continue the engagement. Mr. Ezewan drew a line. Yes, there's need for individuals or individual organizations to work with their strength. and also agree that there's need for us to collaborate at some point. I believe there are some areas where, for instance, if we file FOI, if everyone file FOI are on the same point, there will be more pressure on these organizations to respond to them. These are the areas we think collaboration will be very, very important. I want to appreciate everyone, and though you, Ojo, we couldn't link up with you, but we promise that almost a weekly we'll be running on this program as frequently as possible. We'll be coming with this kind of dialogue. PRIMOG is wanting to fill the gap that we cannot meet. It's even easier for us to stay in our office and do the dialogue that we are doing now. They actually indicated that they were going to join us. Maybe they were carried away by some other things, but we are still working with them. We want to appreciate everyone, particularly those who probably want to make a contribution and time did not allow us to go. Next time is another opportunity. We want to appreciate everyone, and we thank you so much for being part of this dialogue. We'll send the report of this dialogue to everyone. We'll harvest your emails, and then we'll do a report of it and send it to you so that we'll begin to take it from there on the things that we have learned. And we also want you to send us information in case you wanted to at PRIMOG.org. You can send us information so that we can do this meeting. I appreciate you all, and I thank you for joining me on this dialogue.
Thanks for having us.